Hi, everybody. Welcome to another PMA Academy session. I'm going to give it a little bit to let people in as people start filing in. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Morgan McKnight. I'm the Executive Director of the Production Music Association. We do these PMA Academy sessions every other week on Tuesdays. And as always, we're super thrilled to have you guys all here with us, and we thank you for being here today. I'm super thrilled to have Serona Elton with us from the Mechanical Licensing Collective. She's going to walk us through what the MLC is doing and how it affects our community. And our global CEO of West One Music, Edwin Cox, will be leading the conversation. And thank you both for your time today and for being here.
It's great. Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you.
This session is presented by Warner Chappell Production, a longtime PMA partner. They're a wonderful group of people over there, a fantastic library and publisher. Big thank you to Warner and the team over there for your continued support. As always, thank you to our PMA Academy series sponsors, APM Music, AdRev, TuneSet, and the NMPA. Lastly, you will notice that we're back in the webinar format for this. A lot of information to cover, so we want to keep it focused. If you have any questions as Edwin and Serona are going through everything, please utilize the Q&A box. We will be tracking questions there. And within the last 15 minutes, I will jump back in and get to those questions. But for now, I will turn it over to Edwin and Serona. Thank you guys very much for being here.
Thank you, Morgan. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this panel. And thank you, Serona, for joining us today to talk us through the wonderful world of mechanical licensing.
Thanks for having me. Yeah,
it's a pleasure. Thank you. So Serona, you're Head of Education and Partnerships at the newly formed MLC. What does that mean, and what does that entail for you on a daily basis, I guess?
Sure, yeah. So as the head of educational partnerships, my role is really to be working with academic music business programs all over the US and community colleges and universities who are educating the next generation of both songwriters and music industry professionals. So my job is really to connect with them, make sure they have what they need so that they understand who we are and what we do.
Yeah, great. So today, I think today's a great opportunity for us to learn from you and understand, obviously, a lot more about what's happening with the MLC, and really just to get a sort of a core understanding of mechanical rights as well. I think that's going to be very, very valuable throughout this session. I mean, certainly, I think for us over the last, I would say, at least 5 to 10 years, we've gone from a very much a sort of business to business distribution for production music through to much more accessible on the streaming services like the Spotify's and Apple Music. So you can certainly see that us as a sort of collective of, I guess, publishers, songwriters and composers are featuring much more prominently on the streaming services. And, you know, and as a collective, really, we're investing in that area as well. So we all have an interest in the fair and transparent representation of mechanical rights. So I think this is a really, you know, the MLC is obviously a very important step within that for us as well. So I think that, you know, that shows you how important this conversation is for today, and for us as a community to get ready to engage with the MLC and to benefit as a collective group of companies and individuals.
Very excited to be connecting with you. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I think the first thing to sort of get into is, you know, what is the MLC and how did it come about? If you could sort of talk us through that, would be great.
Sure. So the MLC is short for the Mechanical Licensing Collective, and we are a new organization, and our job really is to administer the newly created blanket compulsory mechanical licenses that were created under it was created under the Music Modernization Act, to administer those licenses, to collect those royalties from digital music services, and to pay those royalties on to music publishers and self-administered songwriters, composers, and lyricists. That's in a nutshell, that's what we're here to do. We were created, if you will, by the Music Modernization Act. In late 2018, the Music Modernization Act was passed. It actually has 3 different parts to it, one part of which dealt with mechanical licensing specifically, and made some changes to Section 115 of the copyright law that deals with the compulsory mechanical license. And it created this new blanket compulsory license and created the Mechanical Licensing Collective to exist for the purpose of administering that license and collecting and paying royalties. So that's the heart of what we are all about.
Yeah. So from our industry perspective, we've obviously, a lot of us have heard about mechanical rights, particularly from our activities in Europe and beyond. But could you just give us a bit of a background, take it back to basics a little bit? What is the difference between mechanical rights and performing rights, and how do they differ within this?
Sure. So, so specifically under U.S. copyright law, although, a lot of the copyright laws in most of the Western countries are the same, but under the copyright law, there are a number of different rights that are laid out that a copyright owner has. One of which is to control the public performance of their work. And several other rights are about controlling the reproduction and distribution of their work. And so public performance licenses, as we know of them and think of them, they are speaking to that performance right, whereas a mechanical is concerned with the reproduction and distribution right. So from a traditional perspective, whenever records were made, whether that started back, on a version of shellac a long time ago, right through 8-tracks, vinyl, CDs, cassettes, I'm not saying them in the right order, but all those different kinds of physical versions of records, right through to downloads and now to interactive or on-demand streams. All of those sorts of activities, that reproduction and distribution of a musical work in a record, and then that being reproduced and distributed, that's what we talk about when we say mechanicals. And so in this context, mechanicals does not include things like video. It's audio only. Section 115 of the copyright law, this compulsory mechanical license is only for audio uses. It also does not involve non-interactive streaming. So if you think of a Spotify or an Apple Music, the kind of service where the consumer gets to decide exactly what they want to hear, and they could play it, on repeat over and over. They can go find whatever track they want to listen to. Those are considered to be interactive, on-demand uses. That's different than some services like Pandora, for example, the Pandora most of us are more familiar with, and other web streaming where it's non-interactive, where you can choose the channel you're listening to, the station, if you will, the digital station, and you might be able to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down or have some limited amount of skipping if you don't want to hear something, but you don't have complete control over it. So mechanicals, as a broad category, has to do with reproduction and distribution. And specifically the rights the MLC is involved with are only for digital. Physical is physical reproductions and distributions, while those are still considered mechanical uses. Those are not actually part of the scope of what the MLC is allowed by law to administer. So for us, it's the interactive streaming, the on-demand, the user gets to pick what they hear, as well as limited downloads and permanent downloads. Those are all within the scope of what we are allowed to administer under the copyright law. Different than public performance, radio, nightclubs, concert halls. There is a performance part, a performance right that is involved in an interactive stream, and that money generally flows from the digital service to a performing rights organization. That's not something that comes through us either. We are just involved in the reproduction distribution part of the rights mix.
Yeah, so it's probably a good sort of time to get into sort of who the licensees are as well then on that side, just to give us a sort of, yeah, a bit of a broader context of it. So who would be the licensees of the MLC then going forward?
Right, so they will be, exactly. Our blanket license starts becoming available in January of 2021. And so the kind of licensees we're going to have are your Spotify's, your Apple Music, the kinds of services that are making music available for on-demand, interactive streaming, limited downloads, permanent downloads. So for music services that are offering streaming, but it's non-interactive, like a Pandora, like SiriusXM type of things. Those will not be our licensees. And video services like YouTube or TikTok or any of those will also not be our licensees. So it's really going to be those on-demand interactive services that are going to be getting their blanket licenses from us.
Yeah, yeah. So then in terms of you know, our community engaging, is this for publishers? Is this for composers to join up and, you know, sign up and benefit? Is it for songwriters? How do we as a community engage with it? And who will be the members effectively of the MLC?
Yeah, so generally the answer is whatever party has the right to collect the mechanicals. And generally that's a music publisher. That's usually something a music publisher is authorized to do based on the agreement they have with the writers or composers that they are entering into contracts with. Normally, typically, I'm speaking very broadly, music publishers are the ones who collect mechanicals from the licensees. And then pay those on to the songwriters and composers based on the contractual relationship they have with them. That's a very broad statement that I know may apply more or less in a production music context.
Yeah, I mean, that might be quite interesting to get to in the Q&A later as well. But yeah. I think, you know, generally, I think I'll make the broad assumption that mechanical rights are held by the publisher. But I think it'd be good when we get to the Q&A to see what the composer community thinks of that as well.
Absolutely. And I just want to add that it really is down to the particular work. So for example, let me contrast this. In the public performance space, songwriters, composers, they join a PRO as an individual. And then publishers also, you know, get signed up with a PRO for the publishing side of things. And then as a writer or composer, you generally have all of your music connected to that PRO. So in the mechanicals world, it might be that there is a composer or songwriter who has written a set of, you know, musical works that they administer. So for certain works, they are self-administered. And in that case, they should become a member of the MLC and they will register those works with us. But they may also have composed musical works that are being handled by a publisher. And so in that case, the publisher would become a member and would be the party registering those works. And so the answer for any given composer or songwriter may not be as simple as a yes or no. It may depend on, well, if all of your works are handled by a music publisher, then you don't need to become a member at all. But if some of your works are controlled by you and some of your works are controlled by a publisher, then the answer would be yes, you should join the MLC for the works that you control. So it's the answer may not be as simple as a yes or no. It depends on who's handling the mechanical rights for your works. Yeah,
so we should definitely see this as a much more of a sort of work by work relationship. So we're essentially coming to the MLC and saying, okay, I have the rights for this work, please can you administrate it for us?
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting. So obviously there's been mechanical rights have existed within these streaming services before, and obviously before the MLC we have the, you know, the Harry Fox agency looking after those and other parties as well actually. What is the relationship between Harry Fox and now the MLC? Is there any connection between them?
Yes, so there is a connection. Not long after the MLC was established, there was a process, a request for proposals that was put out there broadly with respect to finding a party that could work with us to help develop a number of things, building out our online portal, creating a sort of starter database, if you want to think of it that way, like a set of data that we can then build upon, but that is as complete as there is out there. And then the process of helping onboard more publishers, make sure they know about us, that they've gotten signed up with us, and helping us to pay royalties when that time comes. So there was a request for proposal put out there. A number of parties raised their hands and came forward. There was an extensive process. It predates me, but an extensive process involved. And ultimately, the Harry Fox Agency was selected to be that partner with us, that vendor that's helping us with this work. And so they have been involved in all those kinds of things, helping develop the portal, get that first set of data in place, because we had a pretty quick timeline from when, we were very first created to when we first will start paying royalties early next year. That's a pretty tight timeline. And, you can't really start with a blank sheet of paper to be up and running that quickly. And so that process, a large part of that process was identifying how can we get a database up and running as fast as possible. So they are working very closely with us on that.
Yeah, so some of us might have seen this, the data quality initiative that was going around, and I'd certainly seen some seminars on that as well. Could you talk a little bit more about how we actually register? What is the registration process, and what is there behind the DQI, which is the data quality initiative, and which is obviously about accurate data. But could you just sort of speak to how do we approach the MLC? How do we get registered? And how do we sort of validate that data within the system as well?
Sure, absolutely. So the DQI, the Data Quality Initiative, that is not actually about registering works with us. It's a mechanism to streamline the comparison of the data that any publisher may have in their own systems, their own spreadsheets, whatever form it may be in, comparing that to the data we have in our database already so that we can identify any inaccuracies or inconsistencies. So anybody can participate in the DQI. On our website, if you go to the section that says, I'm a publisher, there's information about the DQI, and you can click through and end up filling out a form online that says, I want to be a part of it. And then we'll provide you with more details, but the quick of it is you will send us your data in a spreadsheet format. We can take it that way. We will run that against the data in our database already, which really has come from the Harry Fox database, if you will. It's the same underlying database. And then give you back information after we've done that comparison to show you where there are inconsistencies so that you can then get those resolved. So the DQI is happening right now. Anybody who wants to be a part of that can be. If you've never ever had any of your work streamed before, the DQI is not really the thing for you, because the DQI is about comparing existing data sets, your data and what's already in the Harry Fox system to see, if those are aligned. So if any of you have data out there already and you think your data may have already, been touched upon before in any kind of mechanical licensing activities, we invite you to be a part of that. Now, separately, in terms of registering your works with us, if you are already a publisher who is affiliated with the Harry Fox Agency, you would have gotten some information sent to you about how you can opt in to make it even more streamlined about how you will interact with us in terms of, signing up, becoming a member of the MLC, and having your works be part of our database. So there's already information that's gone out to the affiliates of Harry Fox Agency. If you've never been an affiliate of the Harry Fox Agency, that is absolutely fine, and you don't need to become one. What will end up happening very soon on our website, you will start, and we'll be mentioning this all over our social media outlets as well. And if you sign up on our website, you can actually sign up to get email updates. We'll be blasting everybody very soon to say, hey, come and connect to collect. Come and join the MLC. And so it'll be very obvious where you can click through on our website and create yourself an account, basically become a member of the MLC. And from that point, then you can start registering your works with us. And you can do that in several ways. And these different ways, are gonna like kind of sort of think of Goldilocks, there's little, there's big, it all depends on how big your catalog is. So if you wanna type the information straight on the screens on our portal, you can do that. And that might make sense for somebody with a really small number of works. If you want to upload a spreadsheet with information about your works, you'll be able to do that as well in the portal. If you use more sophisticated software and you can generate something called a CWR file, you'll be able to generate that and send that to us. So, we have a couple different sizes of how to submit your data, how to register your works with us. And
yeah,
all
I think
of those will be available.
Yeah, I mean, I would sort of back you up on your promotion of the website as well. Actually, there's a lot of information on there that's really valuable, actually, and it's very detailed and breaks down, much more information about the MLC and the rights included. And there's actually some really useful diagrams as well, which show you how licensees interact with those rights and how it flows through to the publisher or to the songwriter composer. So yeah, really valuable. Someone's put the MLC link up in the chat as well.
And please do visit, regularly. We're continually creating more information, particularly more information that explains things to update our website. So, it's not staying static. We invite you to visit us regularly for more and more information that's continuing to be posted.
Yeah. So in terms of us joining and getting involved, the website really is the place to be. And in terms of a go live date, we're looking at the top of 2021, so January the 1st.
So let me actually clarify that. So the top of 2021 is when we will start issuing blanket licenses to digital services. And then they will start, reporting back royalties to us, and those will start flowing through. But our portal, where you'll be able to join the MLC and register your works, that is going live very soon. That will be live well before January. And that is coming up just in a couple of weeks. And so that's where you'll see us posting on socials. You'll see information on the website that says, like, click here to connect and collect. That's coming well before next January.
Yeah. So just get signed up, get engaged, sign up to the newsletter. I think that's the tip, really, isn't it, for everyone to get on with. So I guess one of the big questions, obviously, is about value. Can you give us a sense of what these rights are worth? What is the value of these mechanical rights that we're talking about?
Yeah, so that's a complicated question because it all depends on compared to what, right? So the mechanical rates that we're going to be paying out are set by the Copyright Royalty Board. And so, there were some rates that were already set. There was an appeal filed. There were some procedural issues. It's going back to the Copyright Royalty Board. So we don't have a final answer on the rates that are in effect right now. But those rates are getting set by the Copyright Royalty Board. And the calculation is kind of complicated. I won't lie. There are some fantastic diagrams that explain this, the way the rate is actually derived on the Harry Fox website. You don't have to have a login or anything. They're just publicly available. So if you go, and forgive me for not typing this directly in the chat, but if you go to harryfox.com/#rate-charts, or just poke around and search for it, you'll see lots of different charts that explain this with a diagram. And we'll have some stuff like that on our website as well, just not yet, but if you don't want to wait. And there's a slide there that describes standalone portable subscriptions. That's what we're involved with. And it gives you a sense of how this rate is actually calculated. It is not a flat penny rate per stream. It can vary from month to month because it involves an analysis of the revenue that's collected. It involves an analysis of the number of streams that happened that month. There's also different rates. You will see from a revenue perspective, different amounts that end up being calculated from a subscription point of view versus ad supported. And so unlike some other things like good old fashioned physical mechanicals where you had a nice flat rate, you know, for the most part, these are a lot more complicated to calculate. But so what I would suggest folks who really want to understand it better, check out that diagram. Also, just in preparation for this call, I did a little bit of searching on your favorite search engine. And I just happened to look up, I used the term Spotify royalties. Just why not? And I found a couple of really great documents out there by some different organizations that have described, you know, how this actually works and gotten to the point of a rough average of a per stream rate. So figuring out the value of these, it's not as simple as a flat per stream rate. It'll vary month to month. It'll vary, you know, it'll vary about how much streaming happened that month on that service, how many times your particular work was streamed, how that compares to how much money you might get for a stream on Pandora or a stream on YouTube. Also not something that we're involved in, the setting of those rates, but a search on your favorite search engine can find some comparisons. Sometimes that gets referred to as the value gap. Sometimes there's articles that talk about, you know, what a typical per stream amount of money might be on different kinds of services. You could also look on some of the ASCAP BMI websites might explain how they pay royalties out for, let's say, radio airplay as opposed to, or you know, television broadcast as opposed to a stream, because, you know, there's a lot of differences about how those are all calculated. So I'm not sure if that answered the question. I'm happy to continue on this one, but it's a bit tricky depending on what you mean by that.
Sounds, yeah. So it sounds like we're going to have to wait and see how this kind of unfolds for us as a community, I guess, and to see what the value is from the different services. So just to try and to summarize it a little bit and sort of boil it down a little bit, we're talking effectively about reproduction rights here, which are in the musical work, which is generally held by the music publisher, the songwriter, the composer, or the lyricist. And what the MLC is doing is providing a blanket license for those rights to DSP platforms, and those are for interactive and non-interactive streaming.
Not non-interactive.
Non-interactive. Interactive, sorry.
Interactive,
yes, interactive.
Limited downloads and permanent downloads, not non-interactive.
Because non-interactive jumps us into sound exchange and
right, not exactly. Well, so non-interactive
jumps us into another world anyway.
Exactly. So for sound exchange is involved in non-interactive, 100% right, but that's on the recording side of the house. So non-interactive services, that's just streaming. There's no mechanical. That is considered to be a part of non-interactive streaming. So a service like Pandora, a service like SiriusXM, they have to deal with public performance, but they don't deal with mechanicals. So that's why sound exchange is really the sort of performance of the sound recording only, not the musical work.
Yeah, great. Good clarification. So
I know it's complicated.
Fully interactive. So yeah, Spotify, the easiest way of thinking about it in our world then is Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music, etc. Yeah, correct. Exactly. So what I think maybe one of the big questions that's going to come up, I've been seeing some questions fly up as we've been going, but I think, you know, from my side as well, it's just trying to understand what it means from an AV perspective. Is there a future for audio-visual in the mechanical space in the US? What is the conversation that's happened around that?
Well, that's a great question, and I don't really have a good answer for you. You know, the MMA specifically amended Section 115, which only deals with musical works in records, in audio only, did not address video. I did not have a seat at the table through, you know, all of the discussions and negotiations that kind of led us to have the MMA. All I can tell you is that right now, the language in the MMA says we cannot do this. So I have no idea what may ever happen in the future. I don't think it was an oversight, though. I don't think it was, oops, forgot to think about video. I don't think that was the case. But beyond that, I can't speak to it. There's, you know, at the moment, and as far as I know, forevermore, Section 115 has always been just about audio, and that's what we work on. You know, the industry itself would have to decide what it wants to do if they want to change any of that.
Yeah. So that's definitely something for us as a challenge then, I think, for our community specifically. Okay, great. So thanks, Serona. I think that was really useful. I think probably the best thing to do is open up to questions now. Morgan, it looks like there's been quite a few coming in. I don't know if you want to sort of pick through and see what we can try and answer. I think that was a really good summary. Thank you, Serona, for, as I say, taking us through all of that. A lot of detail, but seems like there is a lot available online. There's a lot available on the website. And
there will continue to be. I mean, we will continue to have webinars. We will continue to, you know, add information to our website because we want everybody to completely understand what we do and how to interact with us so that we can get them paid. Yeah,
great. That's really, nice words. We like those. So Morgan, do you want to run us through some questions?
Yeah. Let's go through. Can you address how this impacts? Does this impact? Is this U.S. only? Does this impact? Those with PRS? How, or MCPS? What are the restrictions globally?
Sure. So we are an entity. We can only issue licenses for the U.S. And collect royalties for the U.S. So any kind of streaming that's happening outside of the U.S., the same sort of scope, interactive streaming, we are not involved in that. The way it will work with foreign societies, let's say MCPS, PRS for music, is if you are a writer in another country and you have granted in your relationship between you and that collective management organization, if you have granted them the rights to collect your mechanicals globally, or frankly, just the US, it doesn't really matter about the rest of the world, but if you've granted them the rights to collect your mechanicals for a territory that includes, territory definition that includes the US, that collective management organization they will join the MLC, and they will make sure that your works are registered with us. We will pay them, and they will pay that writer in the UK, for example, or that publisher in the UK. So, and that's different for each country, whether or not a particular publisher or self-administered songwriter in any particular country, the relationship they have with the collective management organizations there, if they have or have not granted them the right to collect mechanicals in the US, that's something that, each publisher, each self-administered songwriter, they should look at the language, look at the terms they've agreed with that particular collective rights organization. But if they have granted them that right, then those foreign collective rights organizations, they will become members of the MLC. They will collect those US mechanicals. They will pass them back on to their own members.
Yeah.
Cool. Will you be looking into a backlog history of unpaid mechanicals?
Yes, so in fact, we will be receiving in February, I believe, a large set of information from the parties that are going to be taking out licenses with us of their unmatched to that point. So things that they were not able to pay out. So we will be, historical unmatched activity, we will be ingesting that and then pushing that through all of our matching to get as many people paid as possible. So there will be an ingestion of historical unmatched happening early next year.
Oh, that's very positive. I didn't know about that. So that's really great, actually. Yeah.
Another question. We opted into the HFA data transfer. Should we also register our works with the MLC, and how do we participate in DQI?
Right, so no, there is no need to separately register them with us. The way our database works is what's in the Harry Fox database is in our database. It's one sort of data set. So if your works are already registered with the Harry Fox agency, you will not need to also register them with us. The DQI, however, is available for everyone. And again, you can just go to our website Under the section right from the homepage, there's I am a creator, I am a publisher. If you click through there, you'll see all about the DQI, and you'll be able to say, hey, I'd like to participate. And if you, for example, are a publisher that already uses Vistex, for example, there's some specific ways we've been working with them to help streamline this data comparison to what we have in our database, which includes everything that's in the HFA database. So we invite you to participate in the DQI. We welcome it. We want you to do that. You know, the more effort we can get everybody involved in to get this data as accurate as possible, the better everybody's going to be. So no need to register separately, and please do join us for the DQI, whether you are or with not with the Harry Fox Agency.
Can we go through again, maybe list off what is included one more time? Because there's a few in here of, you know, why would YouTube not apply if it's interactive? So some of these, can we just go through what is applied and why some others may be left out?
Sure. I know this is some of the most confusing stuff of all. And, you know, I should have had a handy diagram because it's so confusing. Sometimes the diagram is necessary. So firstly, we have to, in our mind, separate audio from video. And yes, I know the video we're talking about includes audio, but audio only, separate from video. Those are different works under the copyright law. One is, you know, musical works and phono records involved. The other is an audiovisual work. So we have to separate audio and video in our minds. And then the other sort of, you know, matrix or, you know, thing, if you want to think of it, is separating interactive from non-interactive, okay? Interactive, the user's deciding what they want to listen to or what they want to download, a la Spotify, Apple Music. Non-interactive, and so in the interactive, non-interactive, YouTube is interactive. You get to decide what videos you play when on YouTube, right? So you have interactive and you have non-interactive, like Pandora, like SiriusXM. You pick the channel you want to listen to, but you're not picking exactly what track you want to hear, and you're not picking what video you want to watch. So if you can think of the way we got to slice and dice all the rights in this world, you've got audio and video, you've got interactive and non-interactive. So mechanicals for the MLC is at the specific point that you have audio only and you have interactive and download use. That's what the copyright law says is our scope, full stop. The law specifies it. The law doesn't give us the option to expand it or not. It's the law says this is what the MLC is here to do, and this is the MLC scope. YouTube, separate. Physical, you know, vinyl CDs, separate. Non-interactive, Pandora, SiriusXM, separate. So, you know, I know it's confusing. I know some might wish we could wave a wand and it's all just together. But I'm afraid that's not the reality of the industry we're in. So, yeah, that's kind of, those are the slices.
Yeah. So on that point, Morgan, is there a MMA document that can be circulated with the membership as well that sort of describes what happened throughout the MMA process and what the resulting impact was on Copyright Act? There must be a document that's available somewhere.
Well, the Copyright Office website also has some great information. They have a whole section dedicated to the MMA. I don't know how much it gets into the process leading up to it so much as the outcome from it. There's actually a couple of short videos the Copyright Office made as well, helping describe what the MMA did. And the MMA didn't change all music licensing. You know, it changed a segment of the music licensing landscape.
Yeah. So I think we should look. We should look for something, Morgan, and see if we can circulate.
Yeah, there's a few links and stuff that have been shared today. So what we'll do is we'll circulate, we'll gather them all, we'll circulate them on social through our newsletter and all of that, and to all attendees here, along with the playback link, of course, so that you guys can watch it again if we need to revisit it.
Yeah, there's a lot of information there from Serona. That's great.
Yeah, a lot of information. It's been great. Will the HFA data transfer be a one-time transfer, or will it be ongoing? For future titles that are registered with HFA, will these be transmitted to the MLC?
It's ongoing, and it's ultimately, you know, I don't want to get too deeply into all the technical stuff, but it's the same underlying data set. So it will be, it's not a one-time thing. It's whatever updates are made to the HFA data, the HFA database, are also available for the MLC to use.
If the same mechanical royalties are collected by the MLC and HFA, what is the benefit of signing up with one or the other?
So it's not quite the same. So the MLC is collecting royalties that are related to the blanket compulsory mechanical licenses that the MLC will be administering. So if you are a service like a Spotify or an Apple Music, you have a couple different ways you can obtain a mechanical license. You can get a blanket one through the MLC, or you can get a voluntary one. You could negotiate with a party that controls these rights and do a direct deal with them. And the major services have some direct deals in place with some of the large music publishers. And in those contexts where we have this, we'll call it a direct license, you have a major publisher or large publisher dealing directly with the digital service, and they have decided between the two of them, they're going to have their own direct voluntary license between them. They can decide between them how they want that to be administered. And they might select, you know, the Harry Fox agency as the party they want to use to actually handle collecting the transactional information from the service and passing it on to the publisher. You know, they can do whatever they want to do. It's a license between the two of them, and they can figure out how they want to actually make that operational. But those are voluntary licenses. The Harry Fox agency is, as an entity, is not involved in collecting the blanket compulsory licenses granted under the law. They are a vendor working with the MLC, but the MLC is the exclusive only party in the United States authorized to administer the compulsory blanket licenses. And so, yes, for publishers, if they want to enter into a direct deal with the major services, which, you know, that's not an option for every single publisher out there, as you'd imagine. They can do that, in which case they're not using the blanket compulsory license, or they go through the blanket compulsory process, which is covered only by the MLC. So it's not really an either or. If your musical works are being used by a service that you have not done a direct deal with, because there's a lot more services than just Apple Music and Spotify. I know we like to use those a lot because people are familiar with them, but they are not the only two services out there in the US that do this kind of musical use. If you are a publisher who does not have a direct deal with these services, this is the only way you can get paid is through the MLC. So it's not really an either or choice. If you are already affiliated with the Harry Fox agency, there's a lot of reasons you may want to do that. One of which is that the Harry Fox agency database is going to be used by the MLC, and you're going to get these royalties, but there may be other things you want to have the Harry Fox agency do for you as well. Remember, all mechanicals are not going through the MLC. For example, physicals not going through the MLC. If you've never affiliated with the Harry Fox agency, you don't need to. It's not a requirement. You don't have to get these kinds of royalties that are coming through the MLC. You would just sign up with us directly. You would just become a member with us directly. So it's not quite the either or. You know, if you think about like PROs, there's 4 PROs in this country, and you have to pick one of them to go through, and there's pros and cons, you know, to which one you choose. It's not quite the same for mechanicals. It's not HFA or the MLC. The MLC has a specific remit. We're the only ones who can do that. And because of our relationship with HFA, there's streamlined processes so that you're not having to separately register your works with HFA and then separately with us. But it's really the MLC that is going to be passing royalties to you for these compulsory licenses under the law.
Okay. Many production music agreements have limited back-end royalty participation for composers and songwriters. Mechanicals may or may not be included. Does that have any effect on the publisher joining the MLC and receiving royalties?
I would say not, based on just what you've said, meaning if the publisher is the party that has the right to collect the mechanicals, then it's that right that is the trigger for them to connect with us and register the works with us. Whether they then have a contractual obligation to pay the composers or the songwriters any royalties, that actually doesn't drive whether or not they should register, the works with us and become a member of us. So you might have one scenario where there's a publisher and the way they bought out these rights is that they do have the mechanical rights and they have no obligation to pay the songwriter or composer. Let's say we have that contractual scenario, then that publisher would become a member of the MLC, would register those works with us, would receive the mechanicals, and then they would have no further royalty obligation to the composers or the writers. A different scenario is the publisher that does have that obligation based on the contract with the composer or writer, that if that publisher collects mechanicals, they then have to pay a portion of that on to the writer or composer. In that case, they would do it. But in both scenarios, that publisher would still become a member of the MLC, register those works with us, collect those mechanicals. That difference is really about whether they then have a further royalty obligation or not.
Right. Okay.
And these mechanical rights are being generated outside and have been obviously for a very long time outside of the US. So there will be some established royalty flow between the composer and the publisher historically, and obviously for ex-US income. But certainly now it's more obviously a domestic conversation, and maybe I think that might change the conversation between composers and their publishers.
Yeah, it has the potential to, for sure.
Yeah.
You mentioned there will be matching the works from unmatched reports you will receive through DMPs in early 2021. When will the first distribution based on the matching results reach the rights holders?
So our first royalty obligation really, I think what we're thinking about, and I actually have a timeline handy that I'll pull up while I'm trying to answer that. The timeline is that the licenses start being issued in January, and we're going to receive the historical unmatched file in February. Once a license is issued, for example, in January, then let's say the end of January month end happens, then there's a time period where the digital service gets to prepare the file, the data and all of that before they report it to us. We have to ingest it, match it, and then pay out royalties. So generally, the first royalty distribution, I believe we're looking at around the second quarter of next year is when we're expecting the first set of distributions to happen.
Okay. Does the exemption also apply to composers who have done a direct, non-exclusive deal with the DSP? Under that scenario, will the MLC still collect mechanicals for works distributed through other DSPs with whom the composer has not entered a direct deal?
Yes, exactly. So that direct deal will be with just that particular DSP. It may not be with all DSPs. And that was a little bit of my point in saying that, you might have somebody who's done a deal directly with some of the big ones, but they may not have done them with every single service out there. And so it might be that, for any given publisher, you are receiving a blend or a combination, not a blend, but a combination of a royalty stream that is based on a direct relationship with the digital service, and then other royalties that are coming based on the application of the compulsory blanket license that are coming through the MLC to you. So a publisher may be getting both of those different sets of reportings to them based on how that service has been licensed.
I got you. Cool. And then to clarify the last question we asked, Abby said, sorry, the question is actually about the first black box distribution, not the first going forward distribution.
Got it. Well, so I don't have an absolutely firm answer on that, but I would imagine it would be on the same set of the first royalty statements that we issue. But I don't have an absolutely firm answer on when the first ones of those would be paid out. It's likely to be spring of next year. Same sort of time period of Q2 for next year, 2021, would be the first distributions we're planning to make, which would at least I believe they would include the historical unmatched that's been matched, as well as the activity starting under the new blanket licenses.
And if you opt into the MLC as an artist or catalog, will you be able to in the future remove your works?
So remove your works depends on what you mean. The database that we are operating is public. It is required to be public by the copyright law. That is a really important part of what we're going to be doing, is this publicly available database. And so, so the data will stay there. And I don't believe you can, it's the nature of a compulsory license. I don't believe you can say that your works are no longer eligible through the compulsory license, right? The law is what determines whether a work can be included in a compulsory license or not. That the compulsory nature there is the contrast with a voluntary license. And so I may not be fully understanding what they mean by withdrawing them, taking them back. But from a compulsory perspective, it's the language in the copyright law that determines whether a work is or is not available for compulsory licensing, as opposed to the copyright owner saying, hey, I'm fine with it. So I think the answer is no, as I'm trying to reason through kind of what the thinking was on that.
Okay. Are there fees associated with becoming a member with the MLC?
No fees, no fees. And another thing that we're excited about is that of the royalties we collect, we will not be taking an administrative fee out of them. Separate from the royalties that the services have to pay us, they separately have to fund our operation. And so, if we collect $1, we pay out $1. There's no administrative fee coming out of those royalties. So there's no cost to join, and there's no administrative fee deducted from the royalties that are paid out.
How are the monies distributed? I guess maybe let's walk through that one more time, how it goes from collection to distribution for independent artists who are not signed with a publisher.
Okay, so so the way it will work is so I'm going to use this because I know we use these terms interchangeably all the time. So you might have an independent artist who may be putting out their own music. In our context, though, we're going to think of them as a self-administered songwriter or composer. That's some of the wording we use to help people understand what we mean by, independent, right? So they're self-administered, as in they have not done a deal with a publisher or any kind of company to administer their rights on their behalf. So what would happen is that self-administered songwriter, composer, lyricist, they will join the MLC. They will then register their works with us. They will go on our website. And like I said, they could type it in or they could upload a spreadsheet. Most self-administered songwriters may not be using software that could generate a CWR file. That's fine. Again, kind of Goldilocks, different sizes for different people. So a self-administered songwriter would join the MLC. They would go onto our portal. They would set up their musical works information there. Then when we receive reporting from Digital Music Services, we bring in that data into our database and we match up the usage information from the digital service with the works information that self-administered songwriter has set up with us. And when we're able to match them, when we're able to connect those dots, then we generate a royalty payment out to that self-administered songwriter. And I will just chime in one more thing, because we didn't really talk a lot about matching, but for your community and your members to know, when it comes time to start registering your works with us, one of the, if not the most critical identifier that you can share with us is, if you know it, the ISRC of the recordings of your works. So I know as a publisher, self-administered, you've got your musical works that you handle. For a lot of self-administered songwriters, they're also artists. And so if that's the case, they may have put their music out through one of the digital aggregator services, and they will know what their ISRCs are. And I believe some of your publishers also, work on both the recording side of the house as well as the musical work side of the house. And so when works are registered with us, what is enormously helpful to the matching process is if we know the ISRCs for the recordings that have been made of that musical work. So something that a self-administered songwriter or publisher could be doing right now, even a self-administered songwriter who, let's say, is not going to be a part of the DQI initiative, it may be that that just doesn't make sense to them, is start finding out what your ISRCs are now, what ISRCs have been assigned to the recordings of your works, so that when you are able to then register them in our portal, you can share that information with us. That will help tremendously in helping us match usage reports to your works and getting you paid.
And can international publishers also join the MLC?
They can, but it all has to do with what rights you may have already granted a party to collect your mechanicals in the US. If you have never granted rights to any other party to collect your US mechanicals, then you can become a member, absolutely. But make sure if in your home country, and let's say you are based in the UK and you have done a deal with the MCPS PRS for Music and they are collecting your mechanicals worldwide, that would then mean you should not join the MLC. So you need to, before you join us, take a minute, look at the landscape of your mechanical rights and who is handling them where, to make sure you actually still have the rights to collect mechanicals in the US.
This is a question I think, Edwin, you may be able to chime into, maybe have input on at least. I'm not sure if you have the full answer, but how are songs signed to multiple libraries on a non-exclusive basis handled?
Oh God, that's a big question. Yeah, I don't know, that's a huge challenge. I guess that, I mean, they could exist under different titles, and therefore, I mean, Serona, I mean, how is MLC going to handle duplicate works, duplicate work claims? Are you going to be analyzing sound files to look for duplication? I guess it comes down to that, you know, what is the duplicate claim process as much as anything else?
Yeah, so I can't speak to all the details of our claims process, but I do not believe we're planning to analyze like underlying, you know, audio files for fingerprints. Yeah. It's really about connecting the usage reports with the musical work. And so where we have that magical ISRC that connects it all, then that's really easy. Where we don't have that ISRC, then we start looking at all the other information that's provided to us when the works were registered. So that's where we start looking at, well, who are the writers, and you know, what else can we find out about this title that helps us differentiate it from another one, so that we know which recording usage to pair up with it. And that, you know, that process, that matching process is going to be quite robust. How we'll handle conflicting claims, there will be a process for that. We're just not ready to, we're not at the stage yet of unveiling what that process is, but we will have one. And the copyright law even sets out a dispute resolution, like, you know, committee. There's things happening that will help iron out the operational components of that by the time that it's needed.
But I suspect if the ISRC and the ISWC are unique, then it is classed as a separate work, its own, you know, an individual work in its own right. Yes,
correct. Exactly. Yeah. Where we have those identifiers, it makes things a lot easier.
Yeah. So even if they're the same song, it would be classed by the database as a different work.
Exactly.
Okay, well, we have just about probably a minute or two left. Is there anything else, any last words, any reminders, anything you want to wrap up with, either of you?
Well, I would just like to say, sorry, go ahead, Edwin, you want to?
Go, go. I was going to say thank you, actually. So yeah, just go for it.
Well, you know, watch this space, right? Follow us closely, please. We are all over all the different social media platforms. On our website, you can sign up to get email updates so that you will know the minute we are ready for you to join us, to become members and to start registering your works. So please do follow us closely for that. And in the meantime, you know, if you have a sizable data set and your works have been out there on services before, please do consider participating in our DQI. Doesn't cost $1, nothing, not even a penny. Sign up. We'll be very happy to start looking at your works compared to what's in the database to get them as clean as possible, even before our portal is live. And if the DQI is just too, a bit too technically complicated for where you're at right now, no problem. Start putting your information in Excel. And if you know those ISRCs or you can find them, that would be a great thing to research now, so that when you are able to register those works with us, you're able to tell us the ISRCs of the recordings of those works. That's probably the single best thing you can do to help make sure that you get paid when the time comes.
Yeah, great.
Great. Okay. Wow. Thank you both so much. Thank you to Warner Chappell Production Music again for sponsoring and presenting this panel for us today. Thank you to the whole entire MLC team. We're looking forward to continuing our conversation with you guys and really working together in our community to be impactful across the board. Any questions that maybe didn't get answered, we'll comb through them. We'll send them over and see if we can get some answers if we didn't get to them today. This has been recorded. You can watch it back. They're all on our YouTube channel. And what else? And we will get the links together for a nice packaged whatever for you guys.
Lots of reading to be done. That's it.
Yeah. Resources, definitely resources available from this for sure. So thank you guys very much. We so appreciate it. And we will see all of you guys, all of our attendees in 2 weeks.
Thanks again for having me.
Thanks.